Hello, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Al's Air Guns. Today we're going to go ahead and look at disassembling a Crosman 2240 XL, which is basically a 2240 with the upgraded steel breech and a threaded muzzle and a thread protector on it. Other than that, the disassembly procedure is identical for the 2300s, for the 2300 and ST, all of those models, as well as for the 2240 standard, with the exception of it using a plastic breech that is slightly different to take apart. But no big difference there. So, things you're going to need. One of the most helpful things if you plan on working on Crosman pistols is a number 2 square bit. Crosman uses this kind of fastener or screw. Let's see if I can get it in there. And you'll notice it does have slots, so you can use a straight blade on it. But the better way to do that is with a number 2 square. You're going to find those there and there. And it is just so much easier to work with when doing that. Another thing I've done, because of the placement of those screws, particularly this front one right near the trigger guard, I go ahead and tape up my tools to attempt not to mar the finish on the firearm, or not firearm, but on the pistol when we go ahead and take it apart. And that is usually where I start in terms of removing the grip frame from the upper assembly. Before we do that, we will go ahead and take off the pistol grips, but before we do that, we're going to go ahead and make sure the pistol is discharged. So we'll loosen this to make sure there's no CO2 in there. Nope, we're not hearing anything. So obviously we shot this dry before we were doing this. And there is our empty CO2 cartridge. Also, we will go ahead and clear it, point it in a safe direction. Boom. Gun's empty, so we can go ahead and start working on it. Already removed that, so we'll set this piece aside. And let's go ahead and take these grips off, or stocks off. In truth, the grip is the grip frame and the part overall. Technically, these are pistol stocks, but people will often refer to them as grips. I don't have the best blade in for that, but we'll go ahead and take that one out. Set our parts aside and do the same thing over here. Simply using a straight blade, and I'm spinning those guys off. Okay, we're going to go ahead and start loosening things up on this. To do that, I've got both my gunsmith toolkit with the square bit, the number 2 we talked about. Also brought out a hex key set so that we can remove or loosen a couple of these. Going to start by loosening these grub screws on the barrel band here. And to do that, I am using a 5/64 hex. Go ahead and loosen that guy. Try and get them back far enough that we don't scratch the finish with the screw when we slide them forward. Because of that adapter, we can't take that off yet. So we'll go ahead and let that rest for a moment. Back to disassembling our pistol here. We used our 5/64 Allen key to go ahead and loosen our barrel band. And now we're going to use the number 2 square point to take this grip frame away from the upper assembly. And I will do that here. And there may be some spring pressure, so I will put my thumb behind here to catch it. And there's not, because that's right, we still have our top screw in. And I'm going to go ahead and release this here. When you take these grip frames off, you have to be very careful not to lose the safety detent. The safety detent is a very small metal ball that has a tendency to spring free and get lost. And let me make sure we don't lose ours. It's held against the upper assembly by a spring. And let's let's go ahead. It's actually beneath the spring, but they'll both tend to fly out if you're not careful. So we'll set it upright. We'll roll that off. Right there we see our spring for the safety. If I can get that up close enough so we can see that. As we take that out, we want to be extremely careful to not lose that, because that helps our safety function smoothly. Otherwise, it just slides back and forth. So we can go ahead and set the pistol grip aside. We now have our upper assembly, and we can remove, we're going to have to go back to a straight blade here real quick, and we can remove this breech screw, or the rear breech screw, I believe they may call it. And that will eventually free this end cap, which is under spring tension from the hammer spring or striker spring. And there we go. End cap off. Spring is out. So what she looks like now. We're going to go ahead and unthread our bolt handle. This allows us to slide the bolt backwards. Also, we have an end cap for that upper piece. Slide the bolt handle backwards, and now we've exposed our our forward breech screw that is in the middle or rear position. Originally, like I said, these were up here in front of the bolt, but on the later designs they've changed it for many of the pistols to be back there beneath the bolt. And in order to take these two pieces apart, we need an appropriately sized Allen key, and that one is not. I believe that we are looking for a 0.05 inch, and we are. I always squeeze the two together like that because this Allen key has pretty soft metal in the head, and it's incredibly easy to strip these. So you want to have the tool well positioned and go ahead and make sure you break that thing free without twisting inside that tiny 0.05 inch socket. It looks like we're doing pretty good. We've got her loose now. So we'll go ahead and push the bolt back again. Seems like gravity's not being my friend here. Oops, why do I have my bolt up front? Get that guy back, thank you. Go ahead and work the screw. As I said, it's a very fine screw, and it's kind of delicate. So you need to be careful not to either strip the threads or strip the tiny Allen head. Looks like we've got it. They actually use the same type of screw on the plastic breech, and you need to be careful with those too. Every once in a while, you'll find one that's in awful tight. Now see here, this main tube has two screw holes in it. So this tube will actually facilitate a breech screw in either position. It's the same screw, it just matters about the breech that you're using, and it'll go through either here or there. Changes the disassembly a little bit. We're going to head and roll that little guy out. Get a look at it there. And we will put it over there by our safety detent. All right. Now we've got our major components apart. Down here, another component you don't want to let get away from you is your transfer port. We've got our bolt coming out the back. Transfer port, I'm going to go ahead and pull out with my fingers. Set that aside. We also need to be aware that there's a little rubber or plastic gasket, a breech seal, they refer to it as, and your transfer port fits into that before going into the barrel on the top. Now that I have removed the transfer port, we can go ahead and loosen our, oops, wrong size wrench there. What did I need? Oh, a little small. So it was not a 16th. I misplaced my, oh, I did probably misplace my wrench. There we go. 5/64. That one is pretty tight. May even be Loctited. So we'll go ahead and, there we go. Spin that guy out. We don't have to take the grub screw all the way out, just enough to release the tension on that barrel. Barrel slides out. There's our transfer port. The barrel band, I'm going to go ahead and loosen this a little more so I don't scratch the finish. Slide that guy right off. And with the exception of our main tube, which contains our hammer, we can go ahead and pull the hammer spring by pulling it back to the area there, and it lifts up and out. Hammer drops out the back. The guns, older guns, don't have this cut in the hammer. If you are using this breech screw position, which the 2300s, the 2250 XL, and a lot of the more recent pistols do, you have to have one of the notched hammers, or otherwise it slams into the back of that breech screw. Earlier guns, the breech screw was up here, and you could use a hammer that looked like that all the way around, and it worked just fine. I am impressed with the finish on that. That thing looks really good. Very nice. Now that we've got that out, the only two pieces still left in are our valve, which we can loosen this screw and go ahead and knock out, and the breech seal. I'm going to leave those in here right now. I think I have a valve handy I can show you to see what that would look like. I had a reason for wanting to take this apart, and we'll do more work on valves the other day. All that we have inside there is a valve that looks like this, and there's the transfer port, and that's the screw hole you're looking at right there. So it sits like that inside the tube. Transfer port's right there. CO2 tube sits right here. Hammer strikes this part, which moves the poppet internally, releases the CO2 up through there, up through the transfer port right there, and into the breech area of the barrel. Pellet is sitting just in front of there, and of course that escaping gas then forces the pellet out of the barrel. I wanted to go ahead and pull this because I need to take it into a shop and measure it for some of the modifications we're going to do. So that's where we're going to stop today, but that is pretty much complete disassembly of a 2250, 2300 style Crosman pistol, with the exception of removing that screw. Using a dowel, typically go ahead and pull the breech seal out, and then use a dowel or some piece of wood to just push the valve out of the main tube there. And that is pretty much what we wanted to cover today. Thanks for sticking with me. If you're not already a subscriber, we would love to have you, so please consider us, and we will see you on the next one. Thanks a lot. Bye.